Hello, welcome to Grief is Real, Big, Better Shared.
I'm Kevin Lee, President and CEO of Mid-America Transplant, and we are honored to sponsor this episode of Grief is Real, Big, Better Shared. At Mid-America Transplant, we have the privilege of working with families across southern Missouri and northeast Arkansas who make the heroic decision to donate their loved ones' organs or tissues. While donation often brings families comfort, they are still heartbroken by their loss. We are driven by compassion for these families and continue to walk with them through their grief journey. Mid-America Transplant provides several programs to help families memorialize their loved one, but we believe that some of the best support can be provided by a grief center. We are proud to work with the Center for Good Grief and appreciate everything they are doing in the region to bring healing to people who are coping with loss. Mid-America Transplant is inspired by life and by the donor families who give transplant patients a second chance at life. For more information about being a donor, visit sayyesgivelife.org.
One of the most common questions we get asked from grieving families is, will my children be okay now that a parent has died? Joining us today is my good friend and Camp Good Grief volunteer, Beverly, to reflect on her grief as an 11-year-old whose dad died. So today I am here with just one of my most favorite people in the world. And I'm so excited that you, all the listeners, get to know and meet Beverly today. So Beverly has been a long-term Camp Good Grief volunteers now with us at the center with our teen grief group that meets monthly, and really anything else that we ever need. Beverly is always there and just such a good soul. And so we are so happy to have her as part of our Camp Good Grief world. I'm happy to have you as a friend and just really grateful for you to be here today to share your life with our listeners. I think particularly parents will really interested in what you have to say. So thank you so much for being here today, Beverly.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. What an intro.
Well, it's all true. It's all true. Beverly, where do you want to start, just in terms of who you are and what even got you to the center? And
I think my story with grief starts when I was a kid. My dad died when I was 11. I was in fifth grade when he was diagnosed with cancer. And fifth grade was kind of a blur. He was diagnosed in the winter and he died in June. And so it was really fast. And a lot of that time was just spent kind of figuring out what that meant for us as a family, for me as a child. And he died right after school ended. So I didn't have the support system of counselors and friends and all of those pieces. And I remember, and not even my school, I didn't come back to my school. I ended in fifth grade. And so I remember starting sixth grade and going to band. And it was summer band. And I walked in and I just thought I would be received differently. Mm-hmm. I thought that people would, clamor all over me. How are you doing? How are you feeling? No one said anything. Wow. And so the message I got from that was, you shouldn't say anything either. Mm-hmm. And I have a twin sister, Amanda, who obviously I went through this with, but we mourned so differently. And she really embraced talking about it with caring adults and our family and her friends. And so I think she had a very different grief experience than I did. But the message I got loud and clear at the beginning was, don't talk about it. And so I didn't. And so I think for a long time, I let myself think that I was fine. Yeah. Didn't need to talk about it. Everything is okay. I am okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big believer in faking it till you become it. Yeah. And I think I maybe embraced that a little too hard when I was 11 and 12. But I remember maybe 2 years after he died, the grief counselor who was known in our community put together a group of kids, none of whom had lost a parent. Amanda and I were still the only ones in our community who lost a parent, but people who lost grandparents or other loved mm-hmm. ones. And she put a group together to meet, and she asked me if I wanted to help. And I think in that moment, in hindsight, I wish I'd said, I'd like to participate. Yeah. But I don't think I wanted to in that moment, right? Yeah. I didn't get, because I thought I was fine. And so Amanda got to attend and I got to help.
Oh, wow.
And so I really positioned myself as kind of the the little adult in a lot of ways. And that followed me all the way through middle school and high school. I remember our teachers wanted us to write about it because they thought that would be so cathartic, and it would have been if I did it, but I didn't. And Amanda did. And even to this day, I really credit Amanda has so many beautiful memories of our childhood because I think she talked about it and she wrote about it, and I didn't, and so I don't. And so I often have to kind of check memories and thoughts with her to say, like, is this how that happened? Because I just don't remember, and she does. And so if I could go back in any way, I wish I would have talked about it more. I wish I would have experienced it more in the moment. But I didn't know I needed to. And again, I really thought I was okay. And so I went all the way through middle school and high school and even into college, really thinking I was fine. And then I started mental health counseling in my senior year of college, just to start working through all sorts of things. And it really ended up focusing on my dad, which I didn't expect. And the world kind of tells you what you what you need. And in that moment, I needed to start talking about my grief, and I never stopped. And so that was so helpful for me and healthy for me. And it really started my trajectory of being the person people talk to when they're grieving, right? So I've worked with teenagers this is my 18th year. And 2 years before that, I was one. And so I have spent my whole life either with teenagers or being one. And so to be kind of that go-to person, to be the person who makes grief something that you can talk about and be open about. If you had told me I was going to be that person at 18 and maybe even at 25, I don't know that I would have believed you, but it feels very central to who I am now. And it's part of why I'm so grateful to the centers and to camp and to teen group, because it just gives me such purpose.
Well, just going back to even the beginning when you were talking about finding out that your dad had cancer, we do walk that journey with a lot of families with that anticipatory grief. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to what that was like for you. Like, when did you find out? How did you know that it was really serious? Or did you?
That's such a good question. It took kind of a long time. Again, the mid to late 90s was not a time when people felt really informed about cancer diagnoses.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of it was figuring out what it is by what it isn't. And so there were a lot of scans and, x-rays and flushes. He had fallen on ice in the parking lot at the university where he taught, and his hip wasn't healing. And so they're like, there's got to be something else, but we don't know what it is. And so that's how they found it. Was because he fell. If he hadn't fallen, I don't know when we would have found it. And he had bladder cancer, stage 4 bladder cancer, which bladder cancer, my understanding from the oncologist is that it's typically found in people in their 70s who work in factories. And my dad was a 53-year-old professor. Yeah. So it just wasn't, all of it felt really unlikely or like incorrect. I think I spent a lot of those first couple of months just not believing it was true. And because I was so young, we also weren't permitted in a lot of spaces where he was being treated.
Yeah.
Right. So when he was in the ICU, we weren't allowed in there.
Right.
We couldn't be in the infusion center. There were just a lot of places we weren't allowed. Yeah. And so I think that also kind of altered our perception of what was happening or how serious it was. I also think my mom and I have 2 older sisters as well, all worked really hard to maintain some sense of normalcy, whatever that meant. Yeah. And for us, it meant being in 5th grade. And so there were it's just a lot of focus on that. My middle sister, Caroline, was also a high school senior. And so from a timing perspective, there was a lot of energy focused on her, as it should be. Right. So I don't remember thinking that it was really serious until my oldest sister, who'd been studying abroad, came home early.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I started to realize, like, oh, this is serious. But I don't remember a lot of family discussions. I don't know that it was something that we really discussed openly, if only because we didn't really know what we were doing.
Absolutely.
We really didn't.
Yeah, you're speaking to that, especially to that time.
Yeah.
And like how you said, it's more about what it isn't, and putting pieces together. And then you're in 5th grade, but it also, I think your whole family was doing that. And again, during that time, there weren't all the discussions. There weren't all the resources there are now to prepare children to do this, to do that, to help them understand.
Well, and I just think everyone's doing the best they can, whatever that looks like.
Absolutely.
And, I feel like a lot of the conversations we have at the center have to do with, mourning the same person differently. And I think a lot of that mourning prior to his death, that anticipatory grief that you were referring to, we all handled it totally differently. And again, for me, because I was kind of the under the radar kid in a lot of ways. I just tried to not ruffle feathers. And if I did, I tried to be funny about it. So I don't know if I was successful, but I just thought the best thing that I can do right now is do my homework and do what I'm supposed to be doing and keep my head down, and someone will tell me when I'm supposed to know something.
I hear that from so many kids. I'm just going to try not to create more problems. And so they do. They'll put their head down, they'll do their work, and then trying to absorb the energy around them to figure out what's happening. And
It's hard. And in the community I was in, where I'm from, it's a small college town. I'm from Kent, Ohio. And in a lot of ways, it is the smallest town you've ever been to. And so you just encounter these people everywhere you go who want to know how your dad's doing, how you're doing. And it's just so much easier to say, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. We're fine. Everything's fine. Even if it's not, because it ends the conversation and then they don't feel bad.
Right.
And I think so much of my early stages of grief had to do with not making other people feel bad.
Yeah. What a great point so many kids struggle with is, one, I'm being asked at a time when it's hard for me to answer, because if I start having feelings right now, I'm going to be embarrassed because of whatever.
Yes.
So I'm just going to say I'm fine.
Yeah.
Or I don't really know, so I say everyone's fine. Or, I can't talk. I don't want to talk about it. And so there is a lot of that with children, is everything's fine, because it just ends that conversation for whatever the reason may need to be.
Yeah. And for a lot of kids, I think, and especially, again, being in a community where we were the only kids who had lost their parent, no one knew what to do. Right. There weren't conversations about how can you support your grieving friends. And had it happened in January, maybe there could have been. But we really kind of missed that opportunity to have that environment. And so where Amanda really created it for herself because of her willingness to share, I was like, I don't want to do that at all. So I just didn't.
Yeah. You needed more of the people kind of in a kind way pulling you out a little bit.
Yes, I needed the grief center.
Yes.
The Centers for Good Grief is what I needed.
Well, and talking about that, just I'm fine. I just think that's so important, because so many children do that as their response. It just teaches you just to keep saying that. Well, if I keep saying that, eventually maybe I will be.
Right.
And so that's one reason why we see kids do that. And then the feelings and all these things can get bottled up and come out in different ways, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. And you also mentioned the difference between you and your sister Amanda with the memories. And I just think that's so important. We talk to families about different ways, especially when, in the first few months and year of grief, of helping cement memories for children, because children's brains can only remember so much. And as especially in the 5th grade, my goodness, your brain is changing and evolving all the time, and you're learning. And so it is so important to find ways for families or trusted friends or, people in the community to help children find ways of cementing those memories. So writing them down for kids, helping children do that through a book or something. And so I just wanted to touch on that, because that's something that we talk about so much. Or we'll send a little homework home of interview your family members and ask them these questions, because we want to get these memories down.
Yeah. I love that. I remember in my first training with the Center for Camp, you had talked about, and I'm not going to get the quote exactly right, but you will, about the blank piece of paper and how every well-meaning adult has the opportunity to leave a mark. Yes. And I remember at my dad's funeral, I had looked back just to see who all was there and made eye contact with someone who told me to smile. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
Just took it with me and kept going. And it's one of those things, it's so well-meaning. Yeah. It's so well-intentioned in the moment. But I internalized it so much. And I think that even now, I'm much more emotional in all ways now. But at the time I was like, okay, that is what I will do.
Right, because you're a child and that's a trusted adult. And they're telling you, you've never done this before.
Nope.
And look, this many years later, that's something that sticks out from that day. And we all have, the quote is from Alan Wolfelt that we all have dangerous opportunity to leave a mark on grieving children. And you're right. And we say this so much in this podcast. So much of what people say to grieving people is not malicious. No. It's like 99% coming from a good place, but it's so not helpful most of the time.
And it's how you adultify children, and it robs them of the opportunity to be kids.
Yes. And in that moment, that adult telling you to smile, it's more about making them feel more comfortable in the moment than
Yes.
you as a fifth grader.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
The last place in the world you're ever going to smile.
It's your dad's funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh. What do you remember that was helpful? I mean, I know you were quieter and kept more to yourself, but were there things that were helpful?
Getting to talk about him was. And I think people avoided it because they thought it would make me sad. But being sad's not a bad thing. Crying's not a bad thing. But in the spaces where I got to talk about him or to talk about our relationship or about whatever it was. I mean, even now, my sisters and I, we tell stories and we just cry from laughing so hard, which I never thought would be, our relationship to grief, but it's true. I mean, we really have found just stories or memories or like realizing, because my sisters and I are separated enough in age, not my twin sister, obviously, but my other sisters are 7.5 and 10 years older than I am. And so we didn't necessarily experience all those things at the same time, but realizing we had shared memories or, I experienced this thing with him. Oh my God, I had that too. Has been really special. And so I think, on the back of the center shirts, when it says grief is better shared, I always say that because to me, when I was younger, the opportunity to talk to him was such a blessing. And it just didn't come often enough. And it had to be framed in the right way, right? So you have to, for an assignment, write about your dad was not happening.
No.
Not happening. But a trusted space with an adult to say, how are you feeling today? Like what memories are coming your way? Like that was so special when I had it at the right moments.
Yeah. And I just want to highlight that because a lot of times people will see a child who's not talking, who's not, on their own bringing up their, these hard things to talk about. Right. And they'll take it as, oh, don't talk to them. They don't want to talk. And in fact, it's how can we approach that child? We're always talking about like, don't approach them when they're in the middle of their friend group, one-on-one is better. Like what you just said. One thing I did with my niece that I found was really helpful, and it's funny now as an adult, she does it back to me, is I would say, tell me how your heart is today.
Oh, I love
Because
that.
if I said anything about grief, she would just, get defensive and shut down. But that worked for us. In fact, she just said it to me a couple of weeks ago. She was like, how's your heart doing? And so that's just something that stayed. But I knew I couldn't do that in front of other people,
right.
And again, with our clients, same way, like people want to be asked, but read the room. Is this the time to do it?
Yes.
And how can you do it? And I'm always encouraging adults just to say, I don't know what to say, but I'm just wondering, is there anything you want to talk about?
Yeah.
I mean, right there, everyone, there's the secret. There's what you can say.
Yes. Yeah. And I often, when I work with students, I often frame it with today. Because I think if it's how are you feeling or what's on your heart, you're like, man, what isn't on my heart?
Exactly.
All the things. Yeah. But if you can say today or in this moment, I think that it narrows the scope in a way that feels not so insurmountable to describe.
Yeah. And then when they can handle talking about how they are today, then you can say, is there something from the last week that you've really wanted to talk about with someone, but you haven't had the chance? It's another way, but I think you're right. Starting with today in this moment is more helpful to them as well. Yeah.
I will say the other piece, being in college and speaking to a counselor about everything, I wish I had done that as a kid. And it's funny because my dad was a counselor. So whoops. But he was a counseling educator. So he taught counselors how to be counselors. And a lot of the work that he did, my sister and I talk about this all the time. Like, where would we be if he were still here? Because it was such a profound loss to us. But to his profession in 1996, he was working on like an AI chatbot for mental health counseling.
Wow.
And so we would come home and he would give us scripts that we had to type in with certain buzzwords to see how it would respond. And we had to take notes on it. We were like his little test subjects. And so it's so fascinating to think that was 1996. Like, where would we be in terms of like accessible mental health counseling?
Yes. Oh, gosh.
Had he not died? And so all that is to say, I actually did a lot of counseling inadvertently before. And of course, he framed a lot of questions to us in ways that I think we were probably getting support at home and not realizing it. And then I stopped for a very long time. Right. And so I think that had I had not just trusted adults, teachers and family friends, but also having a counselor to talk to would have been ideal. And I know that Amanda, through that grief group that that she attended and I helped with, that was really meaningful to her. And the grief counselor who ran it is married to the man who runs the funeral home in town. So it's kind of a perfect partnership. And they were such dear friends of ours and are such dear friends of ours. And so I just wish I'd taken advantage of it when I had the chance.
So leading or, helping with the grief group when you were younger, but now doing that with us, what is that like for you on those nights? You have to see that little girl of yourself.
All the time. And I probably see her more at camp, I think, than I do at teen group, only because I was 11. And so I think I'm a little mentally frozen in that space where I'm more of a camper and not a teen grouper. But being with teen group every month, it's the perfect amount of time to get to see how they, sometimes physically grow. Some of them are shooting up like weeds.
Yes, they are.
But to see how they grow every month and to start, in your shell or to not participate or to tell that they're listening, but they're not ready to talk. Right. To see what a month, 6 months, a year does is so special. And I just feel really honored and grateful to get to be a small part of that. Just to watch and to encourage. And in the spaces where we get to talk about our grief, to say,
yes,
here's an adult who wishes they had this or wishes they'd participated in it. And now, to get to participate as an adult, it is cathartic for me too. So selfishly, I'm glad I get to go every month. Thanks for the counseling. But no, it's a special group of kids, but it's also, I think it's special to the volunteers and to the folks who work there too.
Absolutely.
To just watch these kids grow. They're just so brave.
And I say this all the time, but that teen group is made up of all these teenagers that would probably not speak to each other anywhere else.
Yes.
And they find that, that bond through grief, which is so universal. And you can watch them around the table. They'll hear somebody say something that resonates with them. And then in teen group, you have, we do something different every month, but one month you shared your story. And I think that was very helpful that they could see you as this grown-up, functioning, well-adjusted, funny, nice, normal adult who had her grief story and who struggled with grief and had to find your way. And I think sharing that was so powerful. And it does. I always say when they hear those stories and they see you, it's like this lantern of hope. And it's like, okay, let me just follow that because there is hope when sometimes it feels no hope.
Yeah. Thank you. Where I work, I get to speak to the school, not regularly, but once a year through our chapel talks. And so you speak to all of the students in grades 6 through 12. And the first talk I ever gave was about grief because I just felt called to talk about it. And I talked about compassion and the real meaning of compassion because the Latin for compassion actually means to suffer with somebody. Yes. And so I told the story of the man in the hole. I don't know if you know the story, but I got it from the West Wing. And there's a man in the hole and he is stuck. He can't figure out how to get out. And so a priest comes by and he says, "Father, can you help me?" And the priest prays over him and keeps going. And then a doctor comes by and he says, "Doctor, can you help me?" And the doctor writes, a prescription and throws it in the hole. But then a friend walks by and he says, "Man, I've been in here all day. Can you help me?" And the friend jumps in and he says, "What are you doing? Now we're both stuck." And the friend says, "Right, but I've been here before and I know the way out."
Yes.
And I think that story sums up my grief center experience fully, is how to be the friend who helps lead you out.
Right. That's so powerful. And it's such a part of our orientation for new employees. We talk about compassion versus to treat, which in our healthcare world, we treat people. And when you look at that, the Latin is to drag.
Yes.
And so, we want to.
If you want to have a podcast about Latin, Angela, you just let me know.
Right. We want to walk with people. We want to companion them. And that's how we as staff are. And obviously our volunteers, that's all of us. And you hear it every month. You hear me say every month that I am only the expert in my grief.
Yes.
I may have all this training and all this other, but when it comes down to being an expert, only mine. And I think that's just so much our philosophy, and the kids pick up on that and they appreciate that.
They do. I think that if they thought they were coming to group or to camp to get all the answers, they're going to be disappointed. But to realize that they're leaving with tools that they can apply to their own grief in ways that make sense for them, then they're going to have such a rich experience and to get to be there for other kids, right? Like I think of certain teen groupers who started really kind of with a singular focus and now seem to be really dedicated to creating an inclusive environment for other kids. And I just think it's just so special.
So special.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go this way. I started the podcast by saying, I really think that a lot of our parents are going to find this episode helpful. What do you think they need to know that can be helpful or supportive to them as they are raising children who are grieving?
That your grief isn't a burden either. I think there's a real comfort in being able to share stories and feelings in ways that don't make it seem like you're their therapist or they're yours. But I think when you create an environment where you can talk about it, it's much healthier. And then as they're getting older, it's interesting. I'm not a special days person, which is just, I'm more of like I saw a gift on a Tuesday and I thought of you and I bought it. Yeah. You might not get a Christmas gift, right? Like it's just how I operate. Right. And so I don't necessarily memorialize special days as much as I think some people do. And so I think being nimble in your support is really important because sometimes it's just as simple as what they had for lunch.
Yeah.
Right? Like where I work, we listen to hymns and there is a hymn that was played at my dad's service and they know if it's going to be up there that I get told. Yeah. So I can come to chapel late. And so there are those pieces that are super important to taking care of, even the adults. Yeah. The adults still need to be taken care of too. So when I think of our parents and the ways that they can be supportive, I wouldn't run from it. I think it's so important to be transparent and to be supportive and to give space and grace. I think that kids work through things at their own speed and all kids are different. And when I think about, again, myself and my twin sister, it was so interesting to have somebody going through this at the same time who's the same age.
Yes.
Because we handled it so differently and we are such profoundly different people. But I think creating an environment where both of us felt comfortable doing that would have been incredibly helpful. And I'm so glad Amanda got that. And I wish I'd been brave enough to advocate for it.
We tell our parents all the time that grieving with your own grief and then parenting grieving children, it is so hard because of all the things.
Yeah.
And because their feelings and thoughts and everything change and the intensity and all the things. And you have all these people in the house in a different place. And it's really, really hard. And so we always, the guilt trip goes away. We're not allowing that.
Right.
But what are some things that we can do? And some days you get it really right and some days you don't because your own grief was out of control. So I just want to say that to the parents listening that we see that it is so, so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, in some ways, I think it's supposed to be, right? Like it's painful because that person mattered so much to you. Yes. And so it'd be so weird if it weren't hard. Right. We'd probably talk about it more.
Right.
We'd probably talk. All the podcasts would be about grief if it weren't so hard. But it's also, it's one of those things where and it's why, in the job that I have and the schools where I've worked, when we've, dealt with death and dying and grieving, I've said, do what you need to do. If going to the service is going to serve you, go. If not going is going to be the thing you need, don't go.
Right.
In this moment, do what feels right to you because what's right for you is not right for somebody else.
That's right.
And I think that the world expects grievers to move on really quickly. And so sometimes I think being in those moments where if it's the service, if it's a wake, if it's, a community moment before or after, getting to grieve with others is such a small period of time in like the ocean of your grief that if you can take advantage of it, I think it's worth doing, but only if you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about parents. What would you say to grieving children who might be listening to this? What do you think they need to know?
I think for grieving children, the most important thing to know is that your relationship with your loved one doesn't die when they do. Yes. That's something that I wish I'd known when I was 11 or 15 or 18 or 25 or 32, is that relationship becomes more rich in some ways, especially, for me, I think about with my dad, I was 11, right? And so I've lived how many more?
Yeah.
Math isn't my gift. But I've lived much more of my life without him than with him.
Yeah.
And so holding on to that influence has been hard, but it's a relationship that I get to hold on to and that it grows deeper in different ways. Volunteering with the Grief Center has certainly helped. But for example, when my grandfather died, my aunt was cleaning out his house and found boxes of letters that my dad sent when he was late teens, early 20s, mid 20s. And we got to learn so much about him, which was so cool.
Yeah.
We found a newspaper clipping. He was a high school junior or senior, and he was in the Clarion Ledger, which is the Jackson, Mississippi newspaper. And he was being highlighted for, I don't know, being nerdy. And his whole thing was like I don't know, it was who he was as a 53-year-old, but as a 17 or 18-year-old.
Yeah.
I just loved it.
Yeah.
Oh, we kept all that stuff. And they're just things I wouldn't know if we hadn't discovered them. And I just thought that was so cool, that there are all these pieces. Or like I'm in a profession where I'm kind of adjacent to the work that he did. I would say I'm not a real counselor. I'm a fake counselor. We do
You're
counseling of
amazing.
a different kind. Thank
Yes.
you. But when I first started in college admission, I was at one of my first college fairs, and this very nice man in a seersucker suit came up and said, I don't usually do this, but are you David Brooks's daughter? And at that point,
Wow.
I was 22. So I lived half my life with him, half without, and I was floored. And it turns out they knew each other in college. I looked just like him. He had to come up. And then at a conference my first year, I walked into like the big fancy, award ceremony, and the first people I see are my dad's best friend from college and his wife. And I was like, what are you guys doing here? And the wife was trying to play coy, but eventually we find out that, his best friend from college is getting this big award. And 15 years later, I got the same award.
Wow.
And so to feel like there's like these weird cosmic moments, I didn't expect those, or I thought they would come differently. Like, here's a cardinal, here's a butterfly. Those
Right.
things sometimes happen too. But I just didn't expect them to come in a profession that I already felt called to do.
Right.
So
Right.
it was really comforting. So to kids, I would just say, your relationship with your loved one is going to change, but not necessarily in the way that you might think. And it's actually like really beautiful.
And ways that you have stayed open to that. As adults, when our parents are living, most of the time we start having a different relationship with them. We start learning, like, oh, you were a person once, and you did some cool things,
Right. You don't know.
And then, but when they die, when we're
Yeah.
young, we don't get that. And so you were able to find that. And so
Yes.
how great that your aunt, first of all, knew that was important and
Yes,
shared
and
it.
shared it.
And then that you were like, yeah, I want to sit here and go through
Yes.
this. And I want to get to know my dad in a different way.
Yeah.
And so that he does continue to
Yeah.
move forward, and you carry him with you in your life in a different way that you would have had if he were still living.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
as an
and
adult.
being a college counselor, we tell kids all the time, like, part of your part in this process when you're applying to college and making that decision is also starting to develop an adult relationship with your parents, which nobody prepares anyone for. Because you
Absolutely.
kind of can't.
Right.
And I didn't get that, right? And my middle sister didn't get that. Only my older sister did. And so we all exist in different ways with him than my
Yes.
oldest sister does, because she just lived a different life.
Right.
And in some ways that's really special. And in some ways, I watch my nephew, who's 18 now, and applying to college, and I just think, how strange that it's, and he's named for my dad.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how strange that we're here.
Right.
Doing this all over again.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned time, and you said something that so many children will talk about when they become adults is, I've now lived more years without my dad than with. And that is something that everyone is just so acutely aware of when it happens.
It really actually took me by surprise. I don't know. And I think it's, again, maybe it's because math isn't my gift, but I remember I was probably, I guess I was 23. And I remember exactly where I was. I was walking through the parking lot to my apartment building, and I just stopped and thought, oh my God, like, what does that look like? What does that mean? And in some ways it's kind of an arbitrary marker, but it feels so big. But then you realize no matter how long you had with your loved one, there are other ways, whether it's letters or talking to family members or going through photo albums or hearing about them from other people that makes it more tangible.
Yeah.
And so I think staying open to that is really important.
Another thing that sometimes people will think about in terms of numbers, and this happened to me, like my brother was 5 years older than me, but I am now older than he ever was.
Yeah.
And that's like that's not right. I mean, that's a weird thing that it can make your head spin. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I have to think about this and I have to feel it.
Yeah.
And that's where that grief burst comes in with that. And so a lot of times it is around numbers, years, developmental milestones, things like that, things that maybe are happening to you that they're not here for, or that they would be experiencing now that they can't.
Yeah.
So, like seeing his grandson
Graduate from high school. How
Yeah.
did we get so old?
Right.
I find that the moment that's probably hardest for me, but I've become better at it, is weddings. And which is funny because I have no interest in getting married. But for some reason, well, not for some reason, for very obvious reasons, the father-daughter dance is really hard for me. But I remember my dear friend got married a couple years ago, and her dad has had a really remarkable health journey. And it's the first time I stayed. And I've stayed for everyone since because I just thought, oh, this is actually really important. And a celebration of their love and their light and their relationship. And I can't believe I missed out on so many years of this thing because I was so confident that I wouldn't want it or that it would be too hard to sit through. And it's actually really nice.
Well, that father-daughter dance comes up all the time.
All the time.
Even with 11-year-olds. Like, how am I supposed to do this,
Yes.
And so we talk about these milestones with kids that may be 10, 15 years down the road because they're just so much a part of our culture and what we think. And, when I got married, we just completely skipped that part because I was,
You're like, nope, not me.
And I was just mad that I didn't get to have it after all these years of growing up, knowing that's what I would have one day. Yeah. And so, and that's where grief is sneaky because it surprises you because you're no longer 11, but you're at a wedding and there's your grief.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and especially, and I mean, you probably feel this more than anybody, right? But even volunteering at the center, I feel really equipped to deal with grief and all the feelings and all the, all the pieces that come with it. And yet you smell hazelnut coffee. Everything's upside down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can prepare for all the possible special days that come your way.
Absolutely.
But it's the ones that take you by surprise that you're like, man, this still really hurts.
It's the tiny, unique characteristics that are theirs.
Yes.
And it's what you said earlier. It's those tiny things, but they're all wrapped up in love.
Yes.
And so that's the things that get you.
Well, and I think for me, part of what I really struggled with as a child was being in a lot of ways my dad's kid, right? I look like him. I sound like him. Our sarcasm is really similar. I have his childhood nickname. And so there are just lots of ways where I remind other people of him in a way that was made clear to me early on was hard.
Yeah.
Hard for other people, which made me feel bad.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that because I wonder if that was something else that you worked at sort of
moving away from
contained.
Or just keeping people at arm's length. Because I was like, well, they won't hurt as much if we don't talk.
Right.
Or if they don't have to deal with this.
Right.
Which I think is part of what made that realization at that college fair when that man came up so jarring. Because I just thought so many people seem to run away from this comparison. So for you to come up and say something, I just wasn't used to it.
What does your family think now about all the grief center and camp work that you do?
Well, when I was in high school and in college, service was really central to my identity. And so I don't think they're so surprised. I do think because they don't necessarily know a lot of what we do. It's not like I call afterwards. I'm like, here's everything we did and here's every proper noun of every child.
Right.
And this is the exact activity we did.
Right.
I take confidentiality seriously.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily doing that. So I think for them, when I say things like, it's the best night of my whole month.
Yeah.
Camp is the best 2 days of my whole year. I think that's a little confounding for them. But they, I think, celebrate that I've found a place where I feel like 11-year-old me would have really appreciated and me today also really appreciates.
Yeah. So I think I have 2 final questions.
Yeah.
One, when you think about your dad today, right now, and if he could say something to you about where you are in your life right now, what do you think that might be?
Angela,
Sorry.
it's fine. I think he'd be really proud. Fancy counseling award aside,
Yes.
I think I have a job that I really love,
Yes.
that I would do for free. Don't tell them. And to find a job that feels like a joy instead is not something I take for granted, and is certainly something that I didn't expect when I found the profession. I went to public school. We didn't have college counselors. So to have a job that really feels like where I'm supposed to be and where I'm supposed to be doing it is not something that I expected. And so I think he would be really proud. I think he would be confounded that I grew up with all sisters and chose to work at an all-girls school.
Yeah.
But I think if he visited, he would get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just feel that whenever you talk about him, just because of the similarities in his profession and your wit and all the things, whenever you have talked about him, I that's the feeling I have, is just that wow, like, look at her. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was, if you ever like read what his friends wrote about him or whatever, he felt like a hug. He was just a warm, kind of loud, sarcastic, incredibly smart person. And it's so funny. Even recently, his best friend reached out and said, I'm at our new retirement community in North Carolina. We were at a rally for something. And I started talking to this man who was so nice. And we realized that college best friend, high school best friend.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, the world works out the way it's supposed to.
Yes.
And so even though, and I think grievers say this all the time, like, what I wouldn't give for one more day. And also maybe not.
Right.
I am who I am because of it. And so those moments, like, he would love to be at whatever whatever social event they were doing. But the fact that they found each other, I think, is so special. And now they live in the same place. Like,
That's incredible. Yeah.
I'm such a huge believer in signs and the universe working out the way it's supposed to, which is kind of how I found the Grief Center to begin with, because I had joined Junior League and you came with the book.
I remember.
And I cried, much like I'm doing right now. And I just thought, I'm meant to be here. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think, I don't know, when I think about my dad, I think that he probably plays a hand in some of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, that one thing that we get asked the most by the families that we work with who are caring for grieving children, will they be okay? Will they be okay? Is this going to ruin them for the rest of their life? Will they be okay? You're here.
Yes.
And so many others that we know and work with and who have come to be with us. But you're very honest in saying that when your grief journey started out, you were more closed off. You didn't do the things that looked or sounded like healthy grief and mourning, but you got there.
Yeah.
What would you say? You shared a minute ago about what you think grieving children need to know, but if we looked back to 11-year-old Beverly, like you're going to get there, or what do you feel like she needed to hear?
You're going to be okay. And this hole in your heart is not going to get smaller.
Right.
But you'll get used to the ache. And I think grief for me kind of felt like a hot stove. I just didn't want to touch it. And I'm not suggesting that you touch hot stoves.
Right.
But I think if I had been more engaged with my grief and talking about it at a younger age, the healthy attitude I have towards it now would have come a lot earlier. And I think, again, I so wish I had the memories that Amanda does. And I think I would have had those if I had been, to your point earlier, more engaged, writing down memories, talking about memories, cementing those things. I think if I'd done a better job at that, I would have those things to hold on to. And so, if I could talk to 11-year-old Bev, I would have said, Like, do the work. Like these adults who are asking, even though you're very annoyed at their continued asking, they are well-intentioned and they might know something you don't. And I think the challenge for a lot of kids and for parents of kids, particularly at 11, 12, 13, is that you can't tell them anything.
Right. That is right.
They know everything. They are the first 11-year-old to know everything there is to know.
Yes.
And so you just have a hard time getting through, but you have to keep trying. And it might not happen that day or that week or that year or for me, that decade.
Yes.
But it happens eventually. And I think it happened for me because I finally opened up.
Yes. And that's what I think I want as a takeaway for families who might be listening to this is it may not happen according to your timetable or even as a counselor what I would like it to be. But it happened for you. You got there and look at all that you do with it now.
Well, and I'm grateful for it now.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever would have said, I'm so grateful for my grief.
Right.
But I am. It brought me to the center. It helped me become the go-to person when a parent is sick or when you're grieving the loss of somebody. At the last school I worked at, we had a child die pretty shortly after he graduated. And navigating that was so difficult in so many ways. And yet I was also able to find a lot of solace in it, comfort. I got to say goodbye. Yeah. Right? And because we knew it was coming, we could do a lot of things to his wishes. And it just felt like a moment where I could be so upset or so angry at all of these things. But because I've become so interested in making sure that I'm able to be supportive of other people, instead I got to be really present in it. And it meant that the example that I set for the boys that I worked with was that we should talk about it.
Yeah.
We should talk about them all the time. And I don't think I would be there without the work that I've done, and then the Centers for Good Grief. I mean, it really has been an incredible experience.
Well, you said it earlier that grief is an expression of love. Yeah. And I think everyone who's listening now knows why you're one of my most favorite people in the whole world. Thank you for sharing your grief, but your love. And then also, just like we say here, grief is real, big, and better shared, and helping families hear that their kids can be okay.
Yeah.
And that okay can look different at different times and in different ways. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with our families through this podcast, but also with our teens every month and then our kids every year at camp. You share so much of yourself, but you know that your dad even comes through in all that sharing. So your relationship, the love is continued. So thank you for that, Beverly.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Grief does heal. Let me say that again. Grief does heal. But like we've said, grief demands attention and care. It also needs support and patience. Remember that your grief is a reflection of your love. You are not alone. The world is full of many grievers like you. You can learn more about us at www.baptistgriefcenters.org. You can check out our YouTube channel, Baptist Centers for Good Grief. You can check out our podcast wherever you get your podcast. Also, know that you can reach out and let us know if there's a topic that you're interested in learning more about. You're welcome to email me at angela.kelly@bmhcc.org. That's angela.kelly@bmhcc.org. And remember, grief is real, big, better shared. We'll talk soon.